What's good, Gifted? This is your host, Steph Wood. Again, I'm coming to you from my city, Norfolk, Virginia, in lovely Hampton Roads. The sun is out. It's about 65. Yesterday was the kid's birthday. She turned 20. That makes me old, and I'm okay with that. Welcome back to What's Good, Gifted. Again, it's a beautiful day, and we've got another awesome gifted guest on. But before we get to that, let me get you on my 60-second soapbox. Today's 60-second soapbox has everything to do with college softball recruiting. I have a friend who has a daughter who's getting ready to graduate high school during COVID. This kid has had no contact. This kid has had no emails from any colleges, and the mom, my friend, still thinks that her daughter has a snail's chance in hell of getting to Division I. I mean, let's be real. I love the kid. She's super talented, and there's a place for her in college athletics, no doubt. But the truth of the matter is, if she hadn't been called before now at Division I level, she might not be called. The best bet for her is to try another path. But it's hard. It's hard for parents. Trust me, I know. I was one. And my guest today was also a parent of a Division I softball pitcher. It's tough out here in these streets. You don't know what you're doing, guys. Mom, dad, we've not been there before. And even if we had been, even if we did play college ball, even if we were the best athlete in our high school, we don't know jack. Friend, get some help, reach out, look into somebody like my guest, this guy, James Spencer, coming up on the What's Good Gifted episode right now. He's been coaching softball for half his life. Well, I would say less than half his life, only because I don't know how old he is. Of all the years I've known him, I still don't know how old the guy is, but I digress. He's been coaching softball for about 27 years, 20 plus years in the travel ball circuit. He had a daughter that played at Longwood. And he's been showcasing softball athletes since 2004 through his business called Legendary Softball right here in Hampton Roads. He's my guy. He nearly helped me raise the kid and so many other girls, 250 plus girls in college. Welcome to the show, James Spencer. I cannot believe you are here.
It's been a long time coming.
I know. How long have I been asking you for this?
A couple of years, it seems like. I finally got my blood boiling enough to talk.
And what did you think about my soapbox? I mean, was I spot on, or am I just off in another galaxy?
Yeah, well, at this stage in time with COVID and how it's affected everything in the college recruiting cycle, parents do need to have a reality check. They do need to have an opportunity to explore for other level divisions for their kids, and they need to be willing to do it. The problem is they have been brainwashed into Division I is the only way to go, and unfortunately the NCAA is shutting that down.
Well, let's talk about why people think that Division I is the only way to go. What is that mindset, and where do you think that comes from? And how do we train ourselves to think differently?
I spoke with another travel ball organization leader about 3 weeks ago, and we had the same conversation. And part of that problem stems from people like myself. I'm guilty, because when I was getting kids recruited, all we wanted to get them done was Division I. And that is where it stems from, because the success of an organization comes and goes with how many kids you put in Division I schools. And it's really not the right way to do it. D1 is not always the right path for every child. I've had kids that have gone to Division II. I've had children go to Florida to junior colleges, all of them be successful. And it's different things that they're looking for. So I would tell you that systemically it comes from travel organizations touting D1 as the only way to go, as well as parents, in a lot of parents' cases, never played athletically in high school or college, and they think that their kid, rightfully so, is the best child in the spot for any school. So sometimes it's just a perception and a reality that causes the issue.
Well, and I agree with what you said. And let's put fact behind it, because only less than 1% of any athlete in any sport has the opportunity to go Division I. And I don't know how many softball players there are in the United States, abroad, or wherever else, but I would venture to say it's far more than there will be spaces available for at the Division I level.
Yeah, there's 330 Division I softball programs, and they're going to probably be less than that when we come out of COVID on the back end of it. I anticipate it's a 10% shutdown of programs across the country. Wrong, I hope I am, but that's 33 programs that potentially could be shut down because there's just no money and no funding. If that's the case, that also means that there are players that those players are going to go for recruitment, and they will probably be picked up before high school players will, because they're already proven that they can play at the Division I level, and they have a shorter time frame to provide money if money is available. So I would tell you that I think there's probably going to be less than 0.4% of the high school kids in 2021 and 22, and potentially this could dribble into 23, play Division I softball. And parents should be getting their kids on with D2s, D3s, and JUCOs.
Well,
and
let's talk
nothing wrong
about
with that.
why.
The education is still the education.
Yeah, I'm sorry, James. I didn't mean to pound Saugery, but a 30-second time out there, because let's talk about why you can understand and kind of look into the future, because you're with these kids and these parents year round through Legendary Softball. Both of your showcase events are sold out months in advance. You have hundreds and hundreds of college coaches visiting the Virginia Beach area. So you're privy to this information. You're hearing it. You're hearing what the college coaches are going through, and you're seeing it play out in your tournaments being affected, and then also your players that you have coached now not being able to play. And not being able to do what they want to do with their career. How much of getting into college is really about softball past a certain level of that competition at the highest level, the SEC being, I guess, the biggest softball conference available to us. So what is the difference between that softball and what we experience at a mid-major or a lower level major that you've heard from your players and even some of the coaches that you've worked with?
Well, the majority of the Power 5 conferences are fully funded. Mm-hmm. There's only 12 scholarships that are allotted per school for softball. That's the max. Most mid-majors don't even have 12 allotted to them. As a matter of fact, I know of one school here in Virginia that has 4.5 scholarships, but has 20 people on a roster normally. Due to the NCAA's addition of the extra year for 2020 graduates this past spring, they now have those kids, freshmen, and they have a roster of 20. They can only travel with 20. And they only have 4.5 scholarships. So when you look at how it's going to impact and affect the mid-majors, that's where it's going to really devastate them. The Power 5, it's not going to bother them. The NCAA even said to all of the programs, hey, we'll allow you to have 4 additional scholarships this coming year. That's nice for you to say that, but you can't fund it. If you can't fund but 4.5 scholarships or 7 or 8 at your program in a mid-major, what good does it do to say you can have 16? You can't even have.
Are you still with me?
Or UCLA, yeah, I am. I don't see any of those Power 5 schools throwing 4 more scholarships out there. for their kids. So it's not a revenue sport, and it's going to suffer because of the lack of revenue that's coming in. And it's really going to suffer because the NCAA, in hindsight, probably regrets their decision to do what they did. And here's my bone with it the most. Those 2020 high school seniors that graduated, they don't get a chance to repeat their high school senior year. So now they're being punished because of the NCAA decision, as well as the coaches are being punished financially for this.
Right. So you got the 2020s that left. Many of them were given the option to stay on. Talk about that effect and what that's going to be doing to, you mentioned a bit ago with the transfer situation, but what does that look like? You can't really turn them away and say, no, you can't finish, or no, you can't play another year. What's that like?
Well, technically the option was guaranteed to them. They could make a choice if they've graduated to leave school and go on with their career. But for the most part, when they were given the option to stay, unless they were a moral, ethical person that had an issue, there was no way for the school to say no. Now, the problem is their scholarships were completed, and scholarships go year to year everywhere except for Fordham University, which is a 4-year guaranteed scholarship. Most people don't even know that. It's the only Division I school in the country that has a 4-year guarantee when you sign your freshman year. So what's happened is those kids are coming back. Well, they've got to figure out how to fund those kids. They've guaranteed kids that were their incoming recruiting class for 2020 money as well. So the money gets stretched even further. So even if you're fully funded, you probably have in most schools, and I know of one school in the SEC that has 32 players on its roster. How can you afford to stretch 12 scholarships over 32 people when you normally only have 20?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be doable.
No, and it's no fault to the kids that came back. It's no fault to the kids that are coming in. But let's face it, I've talked to at least 25 D1 schools because I had a camp and I had to juggle my camp from D1s attending to now doing only D2s and D3s because of the NCAA shutdown on recruiting. They say till January 1st.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. That's a good segue, because when I'm on the phone with the people I know that still have kids in softball and still are trying to push, and even when we're at events and you hear parents talking, and you think of opportunities like camps and different things like this, and of course, we have a bias because we both have been working with legendary softball for ever. So, but having said that, you do have camps coming up, and that camp has been affected. Your summer was affected. Looking at your fall, what can parents do, and is it beneficial for them to get their kids into this camp, and why?
Well, I had to replace the D1s that I had committed, and I've done that recently in the last 8 to 10 days. I've replaced them with D2s and 3s throughout a 5 or 6 state area to get some really quality schools in here that's going to provide it. And number one, these are schools that are going to be recruiting. There are schools that are looking to fill 2021s, 2022s, and 2023's dream of playing ball at a collegiate level. I will, and again, the 25 or so that I talked to in the Division I world, they're done with 21s. When they get back on the field to recruit, it's going to be June the 5th of 2021, unless the NCAA shuts them down again. I don't anticipate that, but the way things are going with that large organization that should be defunded is not very good, in my opinion.
Right now, James. You just gave us a hot button word.
I've said it before, defund the NCAA. But I really think that it's going to create a massive issue. The ones that I know, they had 2 or 3 2021s on their radar. Now, because of all the kids that were gone and came back, and the ones that are there and are going to stay there, plus the amount of kids that are going to go into the portal. Because let's face it, if you're one of 32 and you're expecting to have a starting position in your sophomore year at a school in the SEC and you don't play because the incoming freshman may have taken your spot, but most likely the senior that graduated that had your spot's going to play it, you're going in the portal. So it's going to have an effect and it's going to have a detriment to it. But most of them know they don't need 2021s. And a lot of them have indicated they already have their targets for 2022. So where does that leave those kids? It doesn't mean they're not going to go to college and can't play. It means they need to adjust their plans. And parents need to understand Division II provides scholarships. As a matter of fact, they a lot of times have more scholarship capability because they tie it with grant money. And grant money is the best money you can get because you don't have to repay it. If you can't get a scholarship, get a grant. So Division III is really funny. No scholarships, nothing available to you. They find money and they give it to their players. It's academic money. So even if your career ends and you have an injury that no longer you can play ball, that money is yours as long as you're a good student and you follow the student guidelines with grades. So I think, and I've had 2021 parents withdraw from my camps because D1s are not going to be able to attend. And I've tried to fight the fight and tell them, there's no way a D1's going to see you. They can't hold their own camp. They can't work an outside camp. And yeah, they supposedly can watch you play in a tournament, but do they really? They say they sign on, but do they sit there for 8 hours in their home and watch a ball game? I say no. And I've had them tell me no, but I've had them tell me they've signed on. So live streaming isn't what it's all beefed up to be. So I just caution people, because instead of, there's nothing wrong. And my daughter was recruited, highly recruited by D2s until she got recruited by a couple of D1s. She went Division I. We were literally almost signing the paperwork for a D2. It might be the best fit and the best thing that could ever happen to a kid, and especially if the opportunity presents itself. There's certainly nothing wrong with having a couple of D2s or a couple of D3s really want your child. And then if a D1 says, hey, I think we really would like to have that child too, then you've got decisions to make. But ultimately, it's about the education. It's about the diploma. It's about what you're going to do in your life afterwards. If you really think that you're going to play professional softball and make a lot of money, let's get that fact straight too. Probably Jenny Finch is the one that makes the most, followed by Kat Osterman. So, because they're name brand people. Most of them make $5,000 and $6,000 a year playing softball all summer long. You can't live on that.
Not at all.
And it's as much as it pains me to see that, because I love the sport, let's be a reality check here. Your career is your degree. You can get a degree at a Division I, a 2, or 3, and you can even get an associate's degree at a JUCO. And I know a lot of good JUCOs that work really hard to get you through 2 years there and transfer you in to a Division I, a 2, or a 3. Matter of fact, when my daughter was at Longwood, there were 2 JUCO transfers her freshman year that played on that team and started on that team. So there's nothing wrong with that either. It helps Division I's out. So I'm really concerned that parents have the wrong idea that their child, if you're 2021 and you weren't contacted and had people on your radar screen in January of 2020, the likelihood that you're going to commit to a Division I school, unless you say that I'm going to walk on, is almost non-existent at this point. And it's because the NCAA has stripped your opportunities from you with these rulings of dead period extensions.
And we are experiencing opportunities being stripped right here with what you're able to do and not able to do with your tournaments and with your camps. I was going to ask you, what do you say to the parent that wants to not attend camps and stop recruiting, or maybe get out of softball altogether. You know, I've heard some of that. Like, is it even worth it? Is it even, what do you say to that parent? And specifically for your camp coming up, how many spots do you have left? Because that's also going to be a thing. I would caution parents to not burn bridges within this process either. So what kind of comments do you have around that?
Well, the current camp that I've got coming up, I don't take a lot of people at that one. It's not like the big summer one because we're indoors.
Mm-hmm.
COVID has no restrictions on me, by the way. I can have up to 250 people per field, per module in there. But technically I can have 2,000 people inside the building. Not going to be anywhere near that. But we typically run about 80 kids, 85 kids on Sunday at that event. We run about the same number through the process on Saturday. They're different kids sometimes. Not all of them are duplicated. But I would tell you, an instructional camp will not hurt you. An instructional camp is going to provide the child the opportunity to look eyeball to eyeball to the person giving them the instruction. And that person who's going to be the coach of a school is going to say, I can teach this kid because they're learning, or I like this kid because of their way that they hustle and their attitude. They get to see that. It's very important that they have that kind of connection. The showcase portion of it is you got to perform. And that showcase happens with the hitters and the pitchers and the catchers. And if they perform well, they're going to get recruited. I've had kids recruited directly out of this camp by Division I schools. So I know darn well that I've had it out of the D3 schools that have always been there. But these D2s and these D3s that are coming are highly excited about the caliber of player that come to my camp. And right now I would tell you that I'm about 55 to 58% sold out. So I would not pull a kid from a camp. I would pull a kid from a non-highly profiled tournament before I would pull them from a camp.
Very well put. Very well put. And you do have some great colleges coming to the camp in October. We've got Bloomfield, Bowie State, Christopher Newport right here in Hampton Roads, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, Lock Haven, Lynchburg, Pfeiffer, Randolph-Macon, Roanoke, Salisbury, Shippensburg, Seton Hill, University of Mary Washington, UVA Wise, and the Marlins. Let's talk about the Marlins. What a great Division III school that is. Right here in Hampton Roads, championship team. You have that guy around a lot. So that's an example of having a college experience that can be remembered, that is wonderful, that is happy, even though you're not at a Division I level. So you've got some really great schools coming. Also, you've got Kathy Riley coming back and Kayla Miller. So you got some really good stuff.
Yeah, it's that lineup of schools from a Division II standpoint. I think there's 8 of them, and there's probably about the same number of Division III.
Mm-hmm.
There's national champions in that line. Lock Haven was a national champion at Division II. There are, with just off the top of my head, with Salisbury, Lynchburg, Christopher Newport, and Brandon over at Virginia Wesleyan. Those 4 teams have been probably the last 5 years perennial top 10, if not national championship teams at Division III level. So the skill level is highly touted. As a matter of fact, a lot of those coaches work a lot of other camps as well across the mid-Atlantic. Several of those coaches have actually spoken to the D1s about how to get the job done at their own national convention. Brandon has spoke the last 3 years at the national convention. So good coaches, good people. I only hire engaged coaches. If they do not participate with my kids at my camps, I fire them. So they know that. They work hard and they love what they do, and it shows when they come to my camps, and we have a really good time. It's more of a family issue. This fall camp is typically a massively large family style program for us, but we had to pivot this year, and I think we're going to add some new family members this year with those coaches.
Well, I think that's excellent. Guys, I mean, for our audience, again, this is What's Good Gifted. I'm Steph Wood. I'm on the phone, on the Zoom with James Spencer, my guy, owner of Legendary Softball, 20 plus year travel ball veteran, also had a daughter that played Division I softball in Longwood. James, your camps are, though, all about like building that relationship. And, you know, speaking, you know, for myself and having Maddie develop inside your camps, being recruited, watched by Towson for years prior to her even really being ready to be recruited, and having those opportunities on the field, playing in front of University of Virginia, being put in front of colleges all over the country via workouts and plugins and all those different things. I get it. But what do you tell the parent that is maybe on the fence about doing this kind of camp versus going to a school camp, or how they're spending their dollars? And again, we don't want to push any business away from the schools, but is there a benefit to having so many coaches in one space at one time?
Well, individual college camps are, I think they're still vital. They're very vital, especially if your child has actually been engaged with them. They really need to go see the campus. They need to see the coaching staff, and I think that that's a great way to do it. I'm happy that they're able to do it. But unfortunately, right now, no Division I school, not even a Division II or a III. As a matter of fact, some of the threes that I know are having to go off campus to have a camp. They're not allowed to use their own campus to do it. So I don't anticipate individual camps being available to them until, again, probably second, third week of June. So it's not going to be something that's available. The question of, you know, the value, I've always tried to have a value where we either have anywhere between 4 to a max of 6 to 1 ratio of kids to college coaches, because I want more eyeballs on the child. The more, if you can take a $350 camp and you have 20 college coaches there, then basically for every set of eyes, you spent $17.50. To me, it's economically better than having one college coach at one or 6 college coaches from the same school look at you because you've had to pay $250 maybe to attend that camp, and that's all you got was the one school. But if they're recruiting your daughter, that's a pivotal thing. It's a difference. We get at our camps, we get people that come, and then they get invited because they were seen at this camp to multiple school camps usually, which basically means they've seen you, they're interested in you. Now you got to develop the interest. So I just think economically, a camp doesn't have at least 8 college coaches in it, I wouldn't send my child. And I did that with my child. I took 6 to 8 kids to individual school camps, thought they were great. It's really how I learned how to design these camps. But the one thing that was lacking was you would spend $1,500 chasing 3 or 4 camps around, and you only got to see 3 or 4 schools. Whereas with me, you spend a lot less money, and you get to engage 15 schools in one location. It's
and
about
that
the dollar.
can't be beat. That can't be beat. And the facility is beautiful. Of course, I'm not trying to run a commercial for your camp, but I'm such a proponent of it. I really, really am, because I know how much it helped Maddie and then all of the girls in the Virginia Legends organization, which is where you did most of your coaching. So my final kind of thought to wrap up with you, James, and I thank you so much for your time. If there's a kid out there right now, or a parent out there right now, and they're 15 years old or they're 16 years old, right around that age before they can really be recruited, but still really want to go to college and play softball, what are you telling them now post-COVID in this environment? And what can the parent do to help communicate, if anything, with these NCAA regulations, both new and adopted?
I would say the first thing that any parent needs to do is they need to go to the NCAA and look up the rules. If you don't know them, then you're going to get you get highly irritated because there are rules about contact and when it can happen and when it can't. And if you don't know, and then animosity kind of happens sometimes, like for a 14-year-old that might send an email to a college coach can't communicate. So if they can't communicate to them, well, they didn't email me back, so I don't like that school anymore. Well, if they can't, why do you not like them? Because you didn't know the rule? Learn the rules. Pay attention to the rules. If your travel coach doesn't know the rules, ask them to learn the rules. There's a lot of coaches out there that are really good. They do a great job with kids, multiple organizations that I've got a lot of friends that coach in other organizations that I coached in, very respected. But there's a lot out there that act like they know everything and they know nothing. Mm-hmm. So I would be cautious of it. I would almost, as a parent, I would say, tell me what the recruiting rules are, but I would know what they are. So when I hear it, I can say BS. So I really like, our sport has expanded and it's still growing, but on the back end of it, it's getting less and less. And it's because it's not about teaching the children anymore how to be a better ball player and how to be a better adult as they grow up. It's now become a me generation. And what are you going to do for me, 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 me? And a lot of that's the parent. So I think sometimes the parent over expects or acts like they know more than they need to. So just learn the rules, understand when you can and communicate. I go to my showcase events. I watch people come up and try to have conversations with college coaches, and the college coaches come to me and say, James, can you please let that parent know that I can't talk to him? It's illegal. Because I can tell you, there's a school that's watching that will turn that school in. Mm-hmm. And then they get a sanctioning issue. So parents don't realize that they even cause problems sometimes. So if you want to talk to them, maybe you approach them and say, is it okay for us to have a conversation? And in that way, the coach can not be rude, but say, technically, the NCAA prohibits me from talking to you at this point. I try to shelter them as much as I can, but I can't get everywhere. There's too many people. So know the rules, and then when you do find somebody that's interested or you're interested in them, scout their team. See if your child fits the year that they're graduating, making sure there's an opening. If your child is a pitcher like ours is, and they just recruited 2 pitchers the year before, our daughter better be damn good. If she's not, she's probably not going to get recruited because they just spent money on 2 other kids, or they just brought 2 kids in that are going to have an impact to their program. So it's not, you don't see colleges go out in football and recruit a freshman quarterback and then recruit a high school senior right behind them, unless you're a Big 5 and you can get those really good ones. So they skip a year because they have one every 2 years, or they find a JUCO transfer, or they find a portal transfer to fill that gap. So be smart about your kids getting recruited. My daughter and I did a lot of homework on the schools over a 4-year period. If you're a freshman, you ought to have 40 schools on your list. Every year you ought to knock 10 of them off because you ought to do your due diligence. And hopefully out of those 40, you narrow it down to where your last 18 months or so, you'll have 8 to 10 of them that know who you are and you fit their profile. If not, you didn't do your due diligence.
Well, and again, James, just because you want them doesn't mean they want you. And that's the final battle when you're trying to figure out where your kid or where you want your kid to go to school, is that at the end of the day, you can want them, but they got to want you. Going to camps, playing at tournaments, having the right group of people around you, guiding you, pushing you, making sure you're in the right process, playing for the right teams, and, making sure you have strong relationships, like you said, with your coaches. And that includes being able to get the correct information from them. But again, at the end of the day, they got to want your kid. And what would you say, and to wrap it up, and again, a thank you, final question, but literally I could talk to you about this subject all day. But final question, how do you know when they really, really want you? Like at the end of the day, it's going to come down to money and an offer, right?
It is. I don't think you really know until you sit in their office and they throw something at you. Mm-hmm. And because they're good poker players. They can't say that they want your child because your child may not want them, and they don't want your child to tell the child that they have in their second position to know that you really told them that. And they don't want to tell all 5 or 6 of the ones that are recruiting, hey, without you, we're nothing. So, so they're going to play it close to the vest, and you're going to kind of know if they invite you to one of their camps to have a discussion following their camp, they're interested. Mm-hmm. If they invite you to their camp and they don't set up a meeting with you, then you're a camper. You're still a prospect, or a suspect, I should say. You're a prospect if you sit in their office.
You're a subject.
So,
I love it. James, thank you so much for joining me. You can find out more about James at legendarysoftball.com. He does have the camp coming up. Give us the dates and the names so people know where to find it, though.
It's the dates are November 21st and 22nd, and it's the Mid-Atlantic Fall Clinic.
Great,
and
James.
it's on the Legendary website.
I can envision somebody listening to this and being like, you know what, I want to talk to that guy. Can they just find you at the website, legendarysoftball.com?
Yep, they can.
All right. Thanks so much, James. Again, guys, this is What's Good Gifted. I've been on the phone with James Spencer, Legendary Softball. Y'all, if you got some kids hitting the ball, pitching the ball, make sure you're getting them into a camp. Check them out at legendarysoftball.com. This has been What's Good Gifted. I'm Steph Wood. Y'all stay blessed.